All right, now we're gonna go over hip rotations. One thing I want you guys to understand when we go hip rotations, it's a big, detailed subject, but it's something that I wanna make sure you always have in your game and in your system. So that would be what we'd call an outside hip rotation. So let's picture if I had a defender on my hip or in this area, and I wanna get into a drop, I can rotate to the outside leg and allow myself to get into my drop from there. So that would be what we'd call an outside hip rotation. Outside meaning your outside foot is going to be your partial pivot foot. It starts to pivot yourself partially around and you transition into your drop. What's nice about outside hip rotations is if my defender is truly on this hip, let's say I do a middle jab into their body, so now they're here, right? Now my ability to go to this foot and then drop, I now have this much space between me and the defender. That's a huge space difference, and I haven't really done anything except just distribute weight to my outside leg. So the power of an outside hip rotation is the space that it naturally creates between me and my defense. So watch what happens. So if I was in that same position, and now I don't want to gain space, but I want to crowd space. So now I might even want to create a little bit of contact. Now I can rotate to the inside foot, and now when I drop, I've naturally created space forward. So a huge difference between ending up doing your drop here and ending up doing your drop here. So this is where you also can start getting, if someone's being physical, you can actually start getting your shoulder into them naturally to start giving a little bit of contact as you rotate into your drop, right? And so there's a lot of advantage to understanding it, but this is when you really have to control weight. So now, just so we have the picture of it, that would be how it's different. Now you're gonna still use the circle. So this is your inside foot, and you're gonna rotate to that foot to still find the drop in the same place. So now your weight is going naturally forward instead of naturally back. This is a forward hip rotation, which means it starts as a forward pivot. As you get around, now all you gotta do is use your drop to rotate the hips the rest of the way. So now if my back is to the defense, what a lot of players would do is they would always pivot to face and then play. But there's an advantage to put ourselves in a drop already. So what I want to be able to do is have the ability to get all the way around, so now I can get into my drop from a complete 180. If I go this far around with a partial pivot, and I want to try to get this direction, if I throw this foot behind me, it will turn the rest of the way. So if I just throw it back, my hips turn. So the reason why these are hip rotations, because you're using your feet to rotate your hips. So now I'm getting outside space away from me. So if I was in mid-post, for instance, or just at the top of the key, I could do one dribble, go. So I'm in this position, one dribble, drop, and go. So just different ways we can access that drop position. For reverse hip rotations, all we're doing is playing with space. So a forward hip rotation was a forward pivot. So I'm reaching for space outside. A reverse is going more towards the inside. So now I want to reverse pivot. So now if I have space between me and the defender, I can do a reverse pivot and get more to that inside space. All right, so it's the same pivot rules, just with the dribble. So right foot is now on the left side. I want to be able to get that same foot to get forward now in order to get to the drop. So as this foot does a reverse pivot back, I gotta be ready for the foot that's carrying my weight to go forward so I can complete the drop. So I get all the way into that reverse hip rotation, and now I can have that same drop action. So it's all about your ability to explore. So now, I know I can do a drop in this space. I can do a drop in this space. So when the insides brought us forward, the outsides brought us back, the forward hip rotations brought us there, and the reverse hip rotations brought us here. So now you're a master of space. You can do anything you want. All right, now, so last part of our hip rotations, we've done outsides, insides, reverses, and forwards. Now we want to be able to get into inverted. Here's where I want to challenge you guys to put more ingredients together, but do it quick right away and see what happens with our feet. So here's the concept. If I have a defender on my hip, and they're not giving me a whole lot of space, and I want to get this direction, all right? So this is the drop I want to be able to get into. I want to go that way, but I'm in this hand. So an inverted hip rotation is a way to get right around to the opposite side drop, because that's what inverted means, opposite. And I do it by putting all these pieces together, so now I can drop and go, all right? So this is what your ingredients would look like. First off, just like our spin seal, we gotta be able to have a dribble release. I gotta change hands without crossing over because I don't wanna put the ball to where the defense would be. So I'm gonna release the ball where it's protected. This foot's gonna come underneath my hips. We'd call this a single leg foot replacement. So that means I'm replacing my weight underneath, so now I can start to do my partial pivot, and now that I'm around, I complete my drop. So that would be the ingredients. Very simple action that looks complicated.